I want to say thank you, for everyone who's been here and wants to listen about uh, the emerging issues in animal advocacy in Asian countries. We have two amazing speakers. I will read their bio. First speaker is Thi-Mai Trinh. Mai is the trustee at Civet Project Foundation. She will share her research, the impacts of civet farming to wild civets population and the public health implication. And our second speaker is Aditya SK. Aditya is part of animal ethics for 5 years as Asia coordinators. He will briefly introduce the topic of wild animal suffering to those unfamiliar with it, and why it is an important and yet neglected cause, and what can we do about it. During this presentation, you can write your question on Hoover, or after the presentation, you can speak directly to the presentation. And without further ado, the floor is yours, Mai.
Hello everyone, how are you? Good? Yeah? Great. So this is my presentation today. I'm Mai from the Civet Project Foundation, and I'm the trustee of the organization. So today I will leading you I will tell you a story and also about our research on the impact of commercial civet farming on the in central Vietnam, and what do we know about this farming and what are the issues. So before I starting my presentation, I would like to ask how many of you here have heard about the word civet or know civet before? Okay, lots of hands. Wow, that's great. And how many of you have seen them in real life? See the species, animals? Okay, some hands left. And how many of you have heard about civet coffee, weasel coffee, or, okay, that's a lot of you. And the last question is, how many of you have tried civet coffee? Okay, there's some hands, brave. Thank you very much. I'm not trying to judge you here, but I hope that after my presentation, so some of you might make a better choice, maybe. Okay. Okay, so civets is a small, lean, and mostly nocturnal animals that live in the tropical Asia and Africa, and it's referred to like a dozen different species, but mostly from the Viveridae family. So there are eight species of civet in Vietnam. So you can see on the top left is the Austin civet and the corner. So it's an endangered species, and they are so beautiful. And the next one is binturong. So sometimes people call them as black bear. It's not a bear, but it's like big and also all black. In Vietnam nowadays, rare. It's very rare in the forest, even though they just listed as vulnerable in the IUCN red list. The next one is large spotted civet and large Indian civet. They are pretty similar, but like the large spotted civet, they have like very like lots of spots on their back. And if you see the picture, it's really cute too. So the next civet are common palm civet, and this species is very common in the civet farming to producing civet coffee or like for meat or any other purpose. And white-toothed civet, so this animal also very rare as well. It's hard to see them in the wild. And we have small Indian civet and musk palm civet. So musk palm is like easy to distinguish because they have a white line on their face. So you can see is that they are beautiful, but not many of them are well known in Vietnam. So why farming civet? So traditionally, the civet was used for food and also traditional medicine. And nowadays, they consider as the luxury delicacy. And also, they are known for their like civet coffee because they phosphate the coffee beans, and they defecate it, and they take the feces and the coffee and process it and make it kopi luwak or civet coffee. And sometimes their scent glands also used for perfume, and their babies also used for breeding pair in the captive farming. So that's why so many wild civet are captured and to restock these farms. So what are the myths and facts about civet farming? So the first myth is that it's an alternative source to wild-caught animal. So it is believed that if the farms are sustainable and it can produce many wild animals to supply the demand, so there will be no animal to be captured from the wild anymore. But is it true? We'll find out later. And also the civet farming bringing economic benefits to, and also helping with like poverty alleviation because of their economic benefits. And also there are myths about civet are so abundant in the forest, so we can just capture them and raise them in the captive. And civet have no disease at all, and it's really easy to breathe. So that if you search on the internet, there's so many newspaper will say that, oh, this is a new way of livelihoods for the poor, and the civet are with high breeding and like easy to breed, you know. And what are the facts about this? There's an increasing number of farms, of civet farm in Vietnam. They started in the south at first, but nowadays you can find them in all across the country, in the north and in the central Vietnam. There's so many of them. And it's illegal to farm the civet in Vietnam as well. Even though they're one species, the Australian civet also endangered species, but they are illegal to farm in Vietnam if they have proof of their origin, that they come from the farm, not from the wild, and meeting other criteria. Yeah, so it's the myth and the fact. So why farming civet is an issue? So we will talk about the impact of them on wild civet population, animal and public health implication, poor management and livelihood and economic benefit, and we will see whether these myths are true or not. So first, I would like to tell about our research. The scope is that we want to understand the impact of civet farming on wild civet population and understand the dynamics of this farm. So you can see on the map, there are two provinces in Vietnam, in Đắk Lắk and Lâm Đồng province, that is in the Central Highlands, and we visit 57 farms. Some of them, most of them are registered, but like more than 20% of them are illegal farm. We also have conducting market surveys and meeting with the Wildlife Management Authority to have their perspective on these issues. So what are the results? What are our findings? First, we have seen 4 different species in the farms. So on the left, you can see that it's binturong, masked palm civet, common palm civet, and the small Indian civet. And the most common species we found is the common palm civet that they were bred in the captive. And 64% of the respondents said that they restock wild civet to their farm at least once. That means like their farm is not sustainable. They need to restock it from the wild. But why they buy the wild civet? Is it because it's cheaper or because it's easier to breed? So we will talk about it later on. And some of the farms that have restocked the wild civet, they locate very near the protected areas, just less than 2 kilometers. So it's easier to get like to the animals. And also 5 farms that have found the snare wounds on the animals. So this is the image of a civet caught by snares. It's a crisis in Vietnam now, and it threatens many wildlife. So this is a civet was caught by snare in the wild. And so the second thing is about public and animal health implications. About the public health, a range of pathogen has been detected in the Viveridae family, and is considered to pose a high-risk risk in terms of zoonotic disease. And the facility we visit did not have any standardized biosecurity protocols. For example, they don't quarantine the sick animals, and they were kept so close to each other and also close to other animals as well, like the domestic and wild animals. So you can see in the corner is the image of the cage. They are small and so close to each other. So for animal health, we have found that a mass die-off of civet in one farm, like 200 animals would die in one occasion, reported due to the unknown disease. And some of them was like sold to the nearby restaurant, which is like very bad for health in terms of health protection. And if the civet with these pathogens escape from the farm, they will harm the wild population, and it actually does. Many of the farm where they reported that the civet was escaped from their farm. So we cannot imagine how it could impact on the wild population. And I'm going to talk a bit more about the poor management and consumer demand. So actually, this slide was made in like on Canva, and it's like moving a bit, but now it's not. So some of the characteristic of the slide is like missing. But there are two questions I want to ask you to mention here. Is captive bred wildlife is cheaper and more sustainable alternative to wild-caught animal? The answer is no, because as I mentioned before, the farm cannot sustain themselves, and with low breeding rate and high mortality rate, they need to restock it all over again, and they need to buy wild animal because it's cheaper rather than the captive bred. And farming system can have to reduce the pressure on wild population is also a no as well. Consumer, we found that they prefer the wild caught civet because they think it's more organic, no chemicals. So that's why civet or wildlife still being consumed more than the captive bred animals. And it also a matter of the poor management, because the civet are managed by the local authorities, but actually the governance is weak, and they only managed by the registration number. And usually this number really different between the reported by authority and what we observe. You know, like 400 animal was like differences from the report and our observation. So can civet farming can be a strategy for strengthening food security and alleviation poverty? The answer is no, because wild meat consumption is not contribute directly to food security. It actually is a luxury delicacy, and only less than 5%, only 5% of the interviewees said that their main income is from the civet farming. But like 95% said that less than 50% of our income from the civet farming is not our major income. And small farms are very vulnerable to change in market price, and many of them closed down. So when we looked at the list that the authority gave us, and we checked, 7 of them were closed down. Yeah. So there are difference between perception and evidence. So we talked before the myths about the economic benefits, poverty alleviation, civet abundance, but we really see the contrast image of it. There are now local extirpation of many civet species, and is also high risk of genetics and low breeding rate and high premature mortality. So I'm going to wrap up with our current activities. So we have established Civet project in 2023, and we recently have released a documentary film called Civet Coffee from Rare to Reckless, and it's an award-winning documentary. And we launched it on the world's first Civet Day on 4th of April, and it reached more than 100,000 people. And thanks to our report, nowadays, like TripAdvisor, Booking.com, and other tourist recommendation page all ban the sale of civet coffee attractions. Yes, so you can see the movie, the films on Facebook, on YouTube is available, and looking for our next activities. So thank you very much and for listening and the civet farming. Thank you.
Thank you, Mai. Next speaker is Aditya. Please.
Check. Hello, everyone. My name is Aditya. I am the coordinator for Asia for animal ethics. Thank you for joining me for this talk. Okay. So today, okay, a little bit about me. So I do outreach on the topics of wild animal suffering, which I'm going to be talking about today, future risks for non-human animals, as well as anti-speciesism and moral consideration for non-human animals. So we focus a lot on neglected issues, and hence I'm talking today on emerging issues in animal advocacy. So today I want to introduce you to this topic of wild animal suffering. I'm sure a lot of you are already aware about this topic, but I will be specifically focusing on a brief introduction followed by why it's a tractable issue and how we can make progress on this issue. So broadly in the talk, I have 15 minutes, so not a lot of time. But I will briefly introduce the topic, familiarize you with what is wild animal suffering and how it's different from other sorts of interventions on wild animals. And secondly, I will talk about, there's a lot of uncertainty about what can be done about wild animal suffering. So I will look at different interventions and different directions of research and intervention that one could do if they are interested in making progress on this issue. Cool. So what is wild animal suffering? So usually when I talk about this topic, there's a little confusion. People confuse it with conservation or protecting biodiversity, etc. So when I talk about wild animal suffering, okay, it's better now. What I'm actually referring to is the positive and negative experiences that individual animals go through. Not on a population level, not on an ecosystem level, but what the experiences of an individual animal in the wild is. And secondly, when I talk about wild animals, yes, these animals are out there in the wild, but also I'm referring to the animals that are in the urban areas, like semi-urban or agricultural areas. This could be like pigeons, squirrels, lizards, etc. And this also includes feral animals, like animals that were initially domesticated but left out into the wild, and then they ended up, becoming wild animals. So we are including all the animals that are not under direct human control. So what animals are we not covering here? Animals that are under human control, even like wild animals like say capital elephants, we are not using this term to refer to them. So to give you a few examples of what kinds of harms do animals undergo in the wild, again, a small disclaimer here, there might be some distressing images here. So yeah, like something for you to consider. It could be like extreme weather conditions. So we as animal activists care about suffering of animals. We care about reducing the suffering of animals. And so it doesn't matter if the source of harm is human-caused, anthropogenic, or it's natural-caused. So animals, from their perspective, they suffer whether it's a human torturing them or whether it's a natural condition causing them harm. And so as an animal advocate, I mean, all of us as animal activists, we do care about reducing whichever form of harm that they undergo. So it could be extreme weather conditions, like these are donkeys huddled in extreme cold in Turkey. Fortunately, they survived, but one can only imagine the amount of misery they went through when they were frozen up like this. Similarly, during storms, when there's like debris, etc., like they usually get injured and they don't have access to aid. So they either end up dying a painful death or like they're predated upon, etc. And during these extreme weather conditions, it also happens that there's famine, drought, etc., and animals without access to food, water, they usually have a prolonged and a very painful death as well. Similarly, there's some work that's been done on cause-specific mortality among wild animals, and diseases is right up there. So animals frequently fall prone to diseases, especially juvenile animals. And so this, for example, is a rabbit that's suffering from mycotomaxis, which is like a very painful viral infection. And they don't usually have access to aid. We humans, we have access to aid when we get diseases. Farmed animals, to some extent, they get some form of treatment. But animals in the wild, they usually never have access to medical aid. Similarly, with natural disasters, whether it's volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, or floods, this is a picture from the Kaziranga National Park where there's floods every single year, and many animals perish. Some animals have adapted to moving away from the flood water, but still a lot of invertebrates and slow-moving animals usually cannot survive during these flood waters. And as I mentioned, I'm not just referring to animals that are out there in the wild. I'm also referring to urban wild animals, whether it's squirrels, pigeons, lizards, etc. They all also undergo the same form of harms that animals in the wild undergo. For example, like diseases, being predated upon, parasites, etc. Of course, when we talk about nature and natural harms, there's also like harms from conflicts, whether it's because of limited resources, limited, I don't know, like territory. Animals usually engage, also for mating, they engage in conflicts, which results in harms, and they usually end up being very distressed after this encounter. And not to take away from the point that humans are also a significant cause of suffering in the wild, like especially during human-animal conflict. There's hunting, whether it's like for territory or sometimes just for entertainment. And also, unfortunately, some animals are unfairly categorized as vermin animals and they're rendered killable. And so sometimes they are systematically killed as well. So when I talk about wild animal suffering, I'm referring to this whole spectrum of harms, from natural harms to human-caused harms. Now that I've introduced you to a few forms of harms that animals in the wild undergo, why is there a reason for us to suspect that there's more suffering in the wild? Because all these nature documentaries romanticize the idea of nature that all animals are living in extreme harmony. Unfortunately, majority of animals in the wild, especially small animals, reproduce in ways where they give birth to huge number of offsprings, out of which very few end up surviving. And for example, with turtles, in a single clutch, they give birth to 600 turtles. If I ask someone, like, what do you think is the major cause of mortality among turtles? They might say, oh, maybe plastic, oil spills, or they get caught in fishing nets, etc. But surprisingly, majority of the turtles don't end up surviving for more than a week. They end up getting predated upon, parasitism, or sometimes just by exposure to sun, they usually end up dying. So it's estimated that somewhere around 1 in 1,000 turtles end up surviving post first week. Similarly is the case with many other small animals. For example, with frogs, like they usually give birth to anywhere, bullfrogs in particular, they give birth to anywhere between 1 to 40,000 tadpoles like when giving birth in a single clutch, and out of which 1 or 2 of them end up surviving to replace the parents. So sometimes during, like when the ponds end up drying, majority of these tadpoles end up dying, and none of them usually survive. And similarly is the case with butterflies as well. Again, I'm trying to give as many examples as possible of smaller animals, and to the extent that invertebrates are sentient and their interests matter. Butterflies give birth to around 400 eggs, out of which 98% of them end up dying. So majority of the animals that come into existence in the wild don't end up surviving, and very few of them actually make it to adulthood and have the opportunity to experience positive things. Right, and yeah, so there's a lot of conversation about farmed animals that's growing within the animal advocacy movement, but very few people are actually working on wild animal welfare. Again, I'm trying to differentiate it from the usual conservation and biodiversity protection. It's estimated that somewhere, this is very uncertain, but it's estimated that there are around 10 to the power 18 animals. For reference point, it's estimated that there's 10 to the power 7 humans alive on the planet, and 10 to the power 13 farmed animals. So this is a really huge number, and this is not including the invertebrates. So there is a potential, as I mentioned, because of the reproductive strategy, there's a potential for huge amount of suffering out there in the wild, and they deserve our concern too. And so what can we do about it? So it's not all pessimistic. There's already work being done. There are, for example, treatment centers for wild animals, for particular species of wild animals, where they are given access to aid. Similarly, during natural disasters, we see individual animals being helped, for example, during the Australian wildfires. It's also been observed that whenever animals are disoriented during tides and they get stuck on the shores, people come together to help marine animals. Similarly, this is from a tribe in India called Bishnoi tribe, where they feed these black bucks on a huge scale. So there's large feeding programs for wild animals as well. And this was in Turkey. During extreme winter, they give food to the animals. And it's not like we are trying to help and animals are not being benefited, right? Animals are benefited. They do end up, benefiting from these feeding programs and the large-scale programs. Similarly, for diseases, this is from a paper in 1980s where there was a study done on vaccinating animals against rabies. Of course, this was done for anthropocentric reasons, which is to protect farmed animals and humans, but animals themselves did also benefit from this vaccination program. The vaccines were basically put in these cookies and dropped from the helicopter, where the wild animals then consumed it and were vaccinated. All right, so these are some examples of work that has already been done, even though they were done for anthropocentric reasons. But what else can be done? So, of course, there is a need for more research to intervene in the wild, given that we understand that wilderness is very complex. There's very complex, intricate relationships among wild animals. It is important for us to do research. So the organizations working on this area are trying to come up with a field of study called as welfare biology, where we try to systematically understand what the experiences of the animals in the wild are like. So if you're from a life sciences background, this might be something that you might want to consider. Secondly, outreach. So a lot of people are not aware about this issue yet. And so it's very important to spread word, spread concern for wild animals, both among among animal advocates, among the general public, as well as the decision makers in the government, etc. Of course, lobbying to include the concern for wild animals, to include their welfare considerations as well when making decisions on how a certain program needs to be conducted. And this is already being done by some organizations working on this issue. Given that I have very less time left, I'm going to go to the next slides. So there's implementation as well, testing out different interventions, as well as funding, because there's only 4 organizations working on this, and the space is hugely funding constrained. So the 4 organizations are Wild Animal Initiative, Animal Ethics, Rethink Priorities, and NYU Wild Animal Welfare. If any of you are interested, I would recommend checking out their website. I'm going to skip through this because how much time do I have left again? 1 minute, I think. Okay. So if you're interested in learning more about this, I would also recommend checking out the survey that we did of different scientists and scholars who are from the life sciences background on their attitudes towards helping animals in the wild. And it turns out that they are not actually against helping wild animals. We have seen that, so we conducted a survey of 311 scholars, and from 19 countries, out of which, the program that was more widely supported was urban animals, like helping animals in the urban regions. And secondly, they supported helping animals during extreme weather events. This is partially because they believe that, oh, humans are responsible for helping, animals when affected by climate change. And finally, they were also in favor of vaccinating animals in the wild. So there are things that we can do that is widely accepted by the public, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to help animals in the wild. And as people who care about the interests of non-human animals, there is a lot more that can be done as well. And so I would encourage you to take this into consideration in deciding how you want to prioritize where you want to invest your energy in. I do realize that this was a lot of content and I didn't have enough time to cover all of it in depth. But if you're interested in learning more about this, you can check out our website. We've also translated our website into different languages, including many Asian languages like Mandarin, Arabic, etc. And you can also check out our video course on YouTube on the Animal Ethics channel, where we have covered all these issues in much more depth. And finally, yeah, there's a complimentary ebook as well. And if you're interested in interacting with this issue in the form of LLMs, you can check out this LLM that we've released on our website. It's called Senti, where you can ask questions related to either ethics, wild animal suffering, or long-termism in animals, and engage on these topics. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aditya. So now we are in the Q&A. I have a few questions here, but if you want to deliver your question directly, please, there is a microphone at the center of this room. Okay, first question is for for Mai. So is there any work to help civet farmers transition to something else, or to help them stop civet farming, or in the future, what might there be?
Wow, that's a great question, actually. It's actually our next project. So we are working on a project called the One House Civet Farm. And it's actually, we are targeting the farmers. And we will try, so our process will be, we will engage them and educate them about how the impactful of the civet farming is, and then have them educate about the health issues and understanding of what the impact to the public and also animals too. And we will then, in the process, we will have them to transition their farm, and we are now engaging with different rescue center and also animal centers in Vietnam, in case if the farmer, they want to transition to a new career or jobs, so they can send the animal to the rescue center or animal center. So yeah, so it's our plan, and it's in the project that we are writing up at the moment. So yeah, so thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mai. So next question is for Aditya. What % of the animals movement budget do you think ought to go towards wild animal suffering versus other areas, and why?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat?
It's about what % of the animal movement budget go to wild animal suffering versus other areas.
Yeah, that's a good question. And unfortunately, I don't have the exact numbers that go to all the wild animal organizations, but I am aware that currently the movement is funding constrained, and less than 5% of it goes. Like, for example, Open Phil recently stopped funding this particular cause area, so there is more room for funding within wild animal welfare. And currently, I would be surprised if it's greater than 5% of the total funding that goes into animal welfare that goes to wild animal welfare.
And do you have explanation why that's happened?
Yeah, so as I said, this field is quite new. Majority of the organizations working in the space have only started working on it since 4 to 5 years ago. And also the awareness about this issue is quite low among animal advocates as well. Animal advocates as well as grant makers. So it's quite important for the word about this cause area to spread among relevant actors for there to be more interest in funding this specific cause. As I said, there are many opportunities that one can leverage to make impact in this area, as well as there's a lot of value at stake here. There's many animals that are suffering, and so there is definitely a need for more awareness and outreach for this to be more salient within the movement. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question is from Mai. Does the Civet project have any educational program to educate civet farmers? And does the program result to the reduction of civet farming?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, right now we don't have the education program, but it's our planning for the future. So you know the Civet project foundation is a newly established organization. And we just launched our organization in 2023, and this year, 2024, have marked our achievements of the first World Civet Day with the participation and reached to 100,000 people, and also launching the Civet documentary film. So you can find on YouTube, called Civet Coffee from Rare to Reckless. And also we're targeting the industry, like tourist industry as well, because you know, like Civet Coffee also an attraction. So currently this is our achievement so far in 2024, but right now we are putting in a proposal that we will engaging with the civet farmers in Vietnam, and targeting 3 different provinces, including Lâm Đồng, Đắk Lắk, and also Ho Chi Minh City that I have mentioned in our presentation. And it will be our next target to engage with the farmers and targeting the root core of the problems, and also helping with the animals that captive in those farms as well. I know it will be not easy task at all. And in Vietnam, there one similar case with the bear bite farming from Animal Asia, and it's successfully. And I think we will learn a lot from Animal Asia, and we will try to follow their step. Nowadays in Vietnam, there's not many bear bite farm are existing, and they're mostly closing down at the moment, and it's a huge success. And we will try to learn from that and make the civet farming is our next target to end the civet farming in Vietnam. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mai. The next question is for both. How can we integrate the roles of scientists and activists to reinforce each other? Yeah.
I can go first. Okay. At least related to the topic that I spoke about, which was wild animal welfare, I think both scientists, scholars, and also animal advocates have like a very crucial role to play. As I mentioned, the awareness about the issue of wild animal welfare is not salient, it's not a popular cause area. And this was also the case with animal welfare in general in 1960s. And the reason it became a popular cause area is because of the efforts of activists like us who spread awareness about this issue among relevant stakeholders. And that's how animal welfare science came into being. So it's definitely possible for us to also follow a similar model and create awareness about this issue among relevant people as well. And also for scientists, as I mentioned, we are in the process of creating a cross-disciplinary field called as welfare biology, which looks at how can we responsibly improve the situation of animals in the wild. And for that, we definitely need scientific rigor. And so people from different disciplines can come together, do research, and try to identify how we can help animals in the wild. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so for the questions, my response would be we should try to establish and like organize as much as dialogue or trialogue as possible, so that the activists, the practitioner, policymaker, and also scientists can meet and talk to each other. Right now, we have dialogues and also trialogue, but I think we still need more. And usually in conference like this or forum like this, I would expect it would be great if we have one session that we can engage with other sector, for example, policymaker, or is in business sector as well. So right now, our engagement with this sector in the forum or conference is not so much, you know, to increasing the impact and raise our voice. I think we will need to have more dialogues or trialogue, or to make people talk to each other, and we also need to find more creative way to attract the attention from these important people that we have not been able to engage to, you know. Yeah, so I think if it can, an organization or program can only success if we can have the stakeholder engagement and also the involvement of the other sector as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Also, this is also for both. Do you think the public is ready for the message of wild animal suffering? And also, do you think introducing the wild will confuse the audience about which suffering area to focus on, farm animal welfare versus wild animal welfare?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it. Could you please repeat it?
I tried to repressing it. Like, do you think the public is ready for the message of wild animal suffering?
If I understand correctly, are you asking like the public reception towards wild animal welfare? Yeah, so that's a good question. And so there's usually this like worry or concern among animal advocates that if we advocate for like the welfare of wild animals, it will come across as too strange or too weird, and people will not take it seriously. But in our experience, and also in my personal experience when giving talks about this issue, once we clarify why we should give moral consideration to non-human animals, and also talk about the different forms of harms animals in the wild are undergoing, people are usually quite receptive to giving consideration to wild animals. And also, I think like because there's no behavioral change involved to actually support wild animal welfare, it's easier for people to support it as opposed to, say, for example, going vegan, where they have to make significant lifestyle changes. So in my experience, it's been positive. Yeah.
What's your
Yeah, so about the wild animal sufferings, I don't have as much experience as Aditya, who have done a lot of research on this topic. But I think it's, for me, and like animals, human, we all have sufferings, you know. Like as Aditya mentioning about the turtles, the survival rate is 1 hour 1,000. Like even though we have not like making any impact, they already the natural selection that they can, the survival rate is low. But for human implication is that we should take our responsibility and to not worsen the case, you know, because the animal, they already have their own like fight for their life and suffering. So we as a human, we should have like more responsible for what we consuming, what we do, and before we consuming or any material, we should check the origin, whether it's causing any animal torture or cruel or any harm to wild animals before we consuming. Yeah, so I think that to reduce the wild animal suffering, so we should be responsible with our consumption. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And that's our last question. please, if you have more interest to following up their projects or intervention, visit their website. I think you will have like the presentation later after this conference. And please give another round of applause to our amazing speakers.